Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. I know you saw the timestamp, it's really long, but in this video I'll basically be going over the entirety of Goretober and what I did and every single drawing, and yeah, I really hope you enjoy. I'm so glad you guys liked the series when I did it, but I promise that this video is shorter than if you were to watch all of the Speedpaints. So if you haven't watched them, then just feel free to watch this video, and whatever Speedpaint you are interested in, you can go check that out later. The link to the playlist will be in the description. And also I just want to say that this video is unscripted because I have no capacity to write a script for a 2-hour long video. If I remember, I'll rate the drawings, just whatever I feel like. But yeah. Okay, now let's get to it. Day 1 was Thief, and for this one I had basically no idea what I was doing yet, because it was the first day of Goretober and I hadn't done this challenge in forever. I did it in 2021 but gave up really early, like day 10, so I had to figure out something new. And I basically had forgotten that Goretober even existed until the day before or something like that, so I really had to figure out what I was doing. And I did this drawing pretty late in the afternoon, and I had just pulled up the list of prompts, and I saw Thief as the first prompt, and I just drew what the first thing was that came to mind, and that was the heron from The Boy and the Heron, which is a Studio Ghibli movie. I saw it at a special event, and it was really cool. And I loved that movie, and it definitely left a little bit of a mark on me, I think. And I also just really thought that the heron looked awesome, because at one point in the movie, or actually at multiple points, he had teeth in his beak, and that just looks so wrong in the best way possible. And so the first thing that came to mind when I saw the prompt Thief, was just the heron from The Boy and the Heron, and so I decided to draw him. But with the pose I gave him, the teeth didn't really fit into it, and so I thought, okay, what's creepier than just one set of teeth? Well, it's teeth in all the wrong places, of course, so that's what I drew. And my pencil drawing skills in this one aren't really the best. Like, I have done much better pencil drawings. I might pop up one on screen right now, but still, I like how it turned out. The professional, I'm not very professional when it comes to the filming setup, but it turned out fine, and I think you can see at least a little bit what's going on. And I'll rate this one a, let's say, 5 out of 10, I think. I definitely have room for improvement with this one, but it looks solid, especially for the first day. Day 2 was Candy Gore, and for this one I knew right away what character I wanted to draw, which is Queen Bee from Hell of a Boss, episode 8, which, by the way, great episode. And I had a concept, but I didn't have an idea what I want to do with the execution, so I tried something new, because I was kind of stressing at this point in Goretober because I had no idea how long my drawings took me or what I would be able to accomplish in such a short time, so I just went with a lineless style, because lineless styles tend to be a little bit more simple and I didn't have to worry about as many layers. But it was pretty much my first time drawing lineless like this in a long time, and I'm not very good at it. At least I wasn't at this time in Goretober. I think I've improved quite a lot over the month. But yeah, so I'm just not very happy with the execution. Like, the flats look fine, the pose is really good in some places. I love the arm that's laying on the ground and stuff, but it just, the shading doesn't look ideal. It looks really soft, to the point that it looks airbrushy, which is not a look you want to be going for in most cases. Like, they're are very few art styles that actually work with that sort of style and look. And in the end, I just think that this drawing looks a tiny bit flat because all the shading is just so soft. It needs a few more hard edges. Like, there is a reason why I generally do self-shading and not soft shading. But yeah, for the gore, I basically just, her lava lamp belly, what if it cracked open or whatever, like, that was just kind of the concept, and I didn't added in some like actual candy inside of it, and I am not showing that here because I really don't like how it looks, but I kind of like how glowy her belly is in here, especially with the multiply layer I add in the end. But yeah, now I'm just adding kind of her hair, blurring it, adding some color correction with multiply layers and overlay layers, and then I added this silhouette kind of with just a simple overlay layer in this bright blue. And this is something that really helps if you need to make your silhouette pop in your drawing. It's something that I do with some of my drawings, and it always turns out well, so I can only recommend this technique. It's really simple, and it really makes your drawings pop. Here's the aforementioned multiply layer. It helped a little bit, I think. And a little detail is that her crown is broken. You can't really see it in the finished piece, but I still think it's a cool detail. And it's there now that I mentioned it. This piece definitely is one of my less favorite ones from Goretober, so I'll rate it a 4 out of 10. Day 3 was Nosebleed, and Nosebleed is such a boring prompt in my opinion, if you just draw a character that has nosebleed, it's not that much blood, I don't think, and especially compared to other Goretober prompts, it's really on the tamer side. So I was brainstorming ideas, and I came up with this idea, what if a skull had nosebleed? And I was like, okay, but I don't want to draw a human skull because humans are boring and difficult to draw and all that stuff, so instead I came up with drawing a camel skull, because I just think camels are really neat animals. They're kind of like my spirit animal, even though I really like when compare myself to a camel or whatever. I just think they're cool. I just think they're neat, that that one meme. Yeah, so for this one I went in a relatively painterly style, as you'll see soon, with the shading. It's something that I've never tried before until now, and I found a new brush that I used, and it's a really good brush for this sort of stuff, and I've actually added it to like my collection of brushes that I use relatively commonly now. It takes a little bit of back and forth to get it to work and get the shading to look just right, but I think that in drawings like this it works just fine, though it can be a little bit difficult to add detail, especially if you don't want to resize your brush, because resizing a brush does not always look very ideal. But yeah, I'm just really adding shadows that are kind of realistic. I'm referencing the real skull that I have over to the left for the shadows and how they look, but also like exaggerating it and obviously doing it in grayscale just to make the blood pop even more. And this drawing is definitely a little bit more artsy, a little bit more abstract, and it's not like quite my usual thing, but I really like it and I really enjoyed making this. And also I actually make 3 similar drawings like this in Goretober, and I really like them. They're my favorite sub-series of Goretober, I think. They're really simple drawings, like all of them is just a skull with some colorful blood on it. In this case it's just red, but and these drawings, I was expecting this to take me like 2 hours or 3 hours maybe, or to painterly style, but this took me under an hour, which I was really surprised by, especially since I was experimenting with a new brush and a new style basically and everything, so I was really surprised it took me this short, and actually this subset of Speedpaints was the ones that took me the shortest amount of time out of all of them, I'm pretty sure. Like, it was incredible, and I just used this subset to kind of fill out the more boring prompts. Because, you know, what are you supposed to do with Nosebleed? Just draw a character that has barely any blood on them. That's just not really what Goretober is there for. Goretober is there to draw some really nasty stuff. But yeah, I really like this drawing. I'll rate it a 7 out of 10. Day 4 was Mutation, and I started drawing this before Goretober began, before I was even aware that Goretober existed. I mean, I knew it existed, I tried it 2 years ago, but I just completely forgot. It wasn't in my brain, and I just saw the first Inktober pop up in my feed on October 1st, and it was just like, oh my goodness, it's Inktober, it's Goretober. I have to draw something. But I was working on this, so for day 1 I actually didn't stop my recording and instead did a traditional one. While for the later days I drew traditionally and just paused this one, and I was actually planning this to be the drawing for day 7 or gut spill, but it didn't work out that way because I was already pretty much finished at day 4, and I was like, this is actually perfect for Mutation, and I don't have any better ideas, so let's just use it for that. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think that the sketch with this character looks really unsettling, and just like in the best way possible. It looks so wrong, and I love it. Like, the sketch is probably my favorite part of this piece. Like, I'd put it on a t-shirt if I could. I'd wear that. I'd wear it on a t-shirt, I'm not even exaggerating. But yeah, I, again, did something a little bit more painterly, a little bit more found footage style. I channeled my inner Thomas Anderson and tried to kind of do a similar style to his. Of course, it turned out completely different, but I'm still really happy with the result. And with the snout here that I'm drawing right now, I added these wrinkles, and then I just liked them so much because they added so much dimension and detail that I just started adding them all over the head and eventually the body. And I think that really brings the whole creature design together. It just makes it look so nasty and freaky and wrong, and it's perfect for this sort of thing where I'm trying to draw a kind of creepy creature. Anyways, this is definitely like one of my longer drawings for Goretober. As I mentioned, I drew it for like 3 days, though I did take pretty long breaks, especially with day 2. I did pretty much just that for pretty much just the drawing for day 2 and wasn't working on this one at all. But still, I think it worked out super nicely, which is also, by the way, why the speed paint was longer. Like, I tried to plan it out for the speed paints to be published, for the longer ones published on Friday, which would match my usual uploading schedule, but it didn't work out that way, so instead I just published them whenever I did a bigger drawing, and I guess it worked out fine in the end. But you know, in the beginning that was the reason why I was planning it to be Godspill, because that was the prompt I thought it fit the best. I really struggled with the eyes, and I'm still not sure if I'm super happy with them, but you know, they are what they are, and I think that they kind of do look as if they are reflecting the light from a camera or whatever. And the body was just a lot of tedious work, working in sections, adding all the details and stuff. If you're interested in watching the entire process, again, I encourage you to check out the link in the description to the playlist and just look at the videos you're interested in. Once you finish this one, if you're interested in finishing it. Yeah, I just added these tendrils and tried to make them look as 3D and nice as possible, while also not make them look repetitive, because otherwise it could quickly get over-textured and boring and not nice looking. So now I just worked on the paw, which I really like the pose in this picture and the proportions and everything. It just works so well. Like, in many of my drawings, I'm not convinced with the pose until I actually render it, but here it was just like, the sketch is perfect, and now I can just improve on it with a little bit more detail. And in some ways, I think the sketch is actually better than the finished piece. And now I'm working on the hole in this character's belly. They have a hole in their belly that's part of their character design, but in this one I made it look gory and nasty because that's the point of Goretober. And I also figured out here that if you take a really, really dark magenta at full saturation, it actually looks like a multiply layer on this sort of muddy red. So that was really fun. I learned a lot about color theory, because with this paint release style I worked with something similar before, but I did it in grayscale, like this sort of realism. But again, I did it in grayscale, not color, so this was a completely different experience, and I had to consider a lot more factors, but I think in the end it worked out quite nicely. And I'm just adding some overlay layers to make some parts pop a bit more, or make them a bit darker or more saturated and stuff like that, which I think definitely helped improve the piece overall, because otherwise it would just kind of be everything a same-ish mess. I mean, it still is a same-ish mess all over. It's really dark. I hope you can see it on your screen, because every time I'm like looking at this in broad daylight, I can't see a thing on my phone screen or my tablet screen or whatever. But regardless of that, I think I rated this one a 7.5 out of 10. I like it. Day 5 was Autopsy, and I had to Google what that meant. And it turns out it's a post-mortem examination to determine someone's cause of death. So, of course, like, an idea kind of popped into my head, and I decided to draw with my redesigns, because I haven't drawn them before in any sort of full rendered piece. So I used Rainbow Dash and Twilight here in this one, and I just think that Rainbow Dash died somehow, and Twilight is trying to figure out how she did, but I don't know either. No one knows. Don't ask me, I have no idea. But yeah, I did most of the line art and coloring in a bus, because I was really stressed that day. I had a really packed day, and there was just so much stuff going on, and I had absolutely no time to just sit down and work on this piece, so I was just working on it in a bus. And let me tell you, sitting in a bus that's going all around and downhill and uphill and I don't know in which directions, it's not very comfortable for drawing, because your hand is just so shaky. In the sped up footage it doesn't really show, but I struggled a lot to work on this piece. But I still really like how it turned out, especially with the style. Now, the redesigns aren't the easiest thing to work with and to render, so I'm actually really proud of myself that I managed to finish this piece even with these more complex designs, especially because it's not something I'm used to working with. Usually I draw normal MLP designs, and those are really simple. They are like 2 colors, maybe 3 colors, and really simple, while these ones have a lot of detail and are definitely not animation friendly. I mean, if it's difficult to draw them, just imagine how difficult it is to animate them. I'm very well aware that they aren't animation friendly, and I will not be trying to animate them. Yeah, Rainbow Dash's design is one of the simpler ones, but I think it works very nicely, and I love his design overall. It's super pleasant to look at, in my opinion. The gore effects in this drawing didn't work out exactly the way I'd planned, but what can you do? I didn't have quite enough time to fully, properly work on it, and to sit back, look at it from a distance, and actually decide, does this look good, does this not look good, because I just didn't have time for that. Again, that's kind of the point of Goretober, or any Tober for that matter. Just finishing a drawing every day is the challenge. That's the point. Yeah, here you can see me trying to do slightly more soft the rendered blood, but it just doesn't work, so in the end I end up changing it a little bit. But yeah, I really like the colors in this piece overall, I like how it looks, and I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Just for the blood effects, they aren't that great. Day 6 was eyes, and I knew right away what character I wanted to draw. I wanted to draw Bellows from the Owl House in his full form, because that guy has tons and tons of eyes, and that's the entire prompt. This drawing doesn't have any gore in it, but I think that Bellows is creepy enough on his own for it to just count as a good addition to Goretober, and I actually used my normal rendering style for this one, with all the line art details and multiple shading layers and stuff like that. Like, I have more than 4 shading layers, on average probably like 6 or something. But this drawing took me a surprisingly short amount of time. It's probably because Bellows doesn't have all that much hair, and he also doesn't have any wings, which definitely helps. Wings are the bane of my existence. But yeah, I enjoyed doing this drawing. Bellows is such a fun character to draw, and in general just such a good character. Like, he's evil and I despise him, but he's very well written and very enjoyable to just watch being evil. Like, you hate him, everybody hates him, that's like a universal opinion, but at the same time he's just so well written. Like, and it's really hard to even try to deny that fact. The Owl House is a great show and I love it a lot. I added this eye in the background with the symmetry tool, which I basically never use. Like, you might notice that in some of my art the faces look a little bit wonky, because most of my drawings I don't flip. And this is because I often forget to flip them, or sometimes I just think that it kind of adds to the creepy and nasty atmosphere of the piece, especially if it's horror related, because I just think it elevates it to another level if the proportions are just a tiny bit off and it isn't quite symmetrical. So I actually try to indulge in that because that's fun. I don't really know what more to say about this piece. I included a lot of footage of it, even though Speedpaints isn't actually all that long. But yeah, I just did my usual shading style with the simple shading, complex shading, simple lighting, and highlights, and then also final highlights on the eyes and stuff. I love adding highlights. It can be kind of annoying to just have to do another layer of shading if you've done 3 already, but in general I like highlights because they make the entire piece pop and just look so much nicer. Sometimes they feel a bit unnecessary because you've added all the shading already, like why do you need more? But yeah, now I'm just adding the glow to all of the eyes. Do not ask me to count them, I have no idea how many there are. If you have counted them or want to count them right now, tell me in the comments, but I rate this a 6 out of 10. Day 7 was Gut Spill. I already talked about this one. This was the one that day 4 was planned to be, and in the beginning I actually had a different idea for this one, but it turned out being a little bit too complex of a composition, so I just ended up turning it into a different day of Goretober, which we'll also get to. But for this one I drew Pinky, being leaned backwards and having like her guts spilling out, you know. And I was just thinking about what I want to do for this one, and I thought, okay, so gut spills usually look really gross and wrong and stuff, but you know what looks even more wrong? It's guts spilling out backwards. That looks even worse, even more wrong. So that's exactly what I did here. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. So if you're wondering what the colors next to Pinky are, I picked those from a video I was watching at the time or whatever, because I just thought that they looked really nice. They were used in like the eye of a character that was being drawn or whatever, but I tried to kind of replicate or pay homage to my 2021 art style, because that's when I first tried this challenge and failed at about day 10. Maybe even earlier, I don't know. But I'll put up a few drawings from that time up on screen now because it looked pretty terrible. They were something. I definitely have improved a lot since then, and like the art style in itself isn't terrible, it's just that my inconsistent proportions and the shading just didn't really work very well, so I hope that I managed to improve on that, even though I kept like the main characteristics of the style, that being mostly the eyes and the ear. It brought a lot of nostalgia to actually like work with the style again, because I really remember how I used it and how I drew with it and how I was really proud of my drawings back then. And they weren't bad per se, they just weren't very appealing either. And now I just want to show you quickly how the actual gut spell was an absolute pain to color in, because I want to use a limited amount of colors, and like how am I supposed to make it work? I think in the end I managed, but now I just add a overlay layer, which helps so much with the colors. Like, the colors of this piece look amazing, I think. And it's mostly because of that one overlay layer, it just makes it look so nasty, I think. And at the same time really warm and colorful and stuff, which is exactly what I like to do in my style recently. Like, back in 21, I really desaturated all of my colors, so they were like 50% saturation or whatever. But right now I really like working with the vibrant colors because I just think it looks much, much nicer. But yeah, overall, I like this piece. It's one of my favorite ones, even like not quite on top, but it's good. It brings me a lot of nostalgia, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10, I think. Day 8 was crystals, and this was one I did traditionally again, because I just felt like doing another traditional piece. And in the end, it worked out really nicely, though my recording definitely wasn't very professional. Like, I'm now starting to earn money with YouTube, but I still have no idea what I'm actually doing, so, you know, just know that my working setup is really like makeshift and everything, and I just put my phone, because that is the device with the best camera, I put that on like a carton box, and that on top of that I put like the hole puncher, because that has a slight slant to it, and then I could put my phone on top of that, and you can imagine that that wasn't very stable. But it worked out fine, and the recording actually isn't too bad. It's just that I keep covering everything up with my hand, which I'm so sorry for that. I hope you can see what I'm doing, because otherwise, you know, I'm really sad. I've never actually really worked with colored pencils before, so this was a first, but, you know, Goretober is here to do new things, to try new things, and I definitely did try new things, and I really like the result, and it's definitely something I want to work with more in the future. I have absolutely zero idea what I was doing with the colors. I just knew that there was a light source with like Cadence's horn, and then there were shadows all around it. So I just tried to use like different hues and values and stuff just to kind of make it work, and I think in the end it still looks a little bit bright, and the lighting doesn't look all that directional, but I think it worked well enough, especially for my first attempt with this sort of technique and medium even. But yeah, the backstory for this one, I'd imagine that Sombra just kind of attacked the kingdom again, but this time Cadence was really ready and she was really angry at him, and then she just maybe he did something to, I don't know, Shining Armor or someone, or the kingdom, and then Cadence just snapped and just started torturing him or whatever. It's kind of brutal. But yeah, I've barely drawn Sombra before. Maybe I have never drawn him before this drawing, but his design is pretty fun, honestly. Like, he's like that edgy OC you make when you're 13 years old and think that that's the coolest thing ever. I certainly did think that that was the coolest thing ever back when I was 13. But yeah, I love his design, absolutely. Like, here we have the fight between the Mary Sue and the anti-Mary Sue. now that I'm thinking about it, because Cadence is like the typical everybody loves her and she's perfect and she's pink and glittery and has the most complex design out of everybody, you know, sort of pony sort of character. Well, Sombra is like the exact opposite of that. So, I just think that makes it really funny. So with her hair, I made it really shiny, and I did my best to make it really, really shiny, because that's what I want to do. And I love, in traditional art, making stuff really shiny, because especially when I work with like just grayscale, I managed to make it work really well, but with colored pencils it was something completely new and different. But I think I managed to make it work. Like, you can see her hair looks very shiny, and I'm super proud of that. Like, it looks really textured. And I'm actually surprised at how well that worked out, especially since I'm really not used to this sort of medium. For Sombra, I did pretty much the exact same thing, just in grey and black and red, you know, his color scheme. And my hand is covering pretty much all of it, not quite all of it. But yeah, I tried to add like light pink lighting, kind of, because he's kind of engulfed in pink magic, so I just tried to kind of reflect that in his lighting, especially in the highlights, which are pink instead of grey. And I think it turned out relatively well. Like, it's not perfect and it doesn't look quite as good as like my digital art would, but you know, this is why I'm a digital artist, not a traditional one, because my traditional art just generally doesn't look as good. But I'm still super proud of this piece, because, you know, it was my first time working like this, and it was really exciting to try something new. And this is the only part where my hand doesn't cover the entire thing, when I did his hair, because I tried to make it look smoke-like, and there I had to use the side of the pencil instead of the tip. Also, you can see that I hold my pencil really weirdly, like, I'm sorry about that, but it's just how I hold the pencil. And yes, my hand does hurt if I write a lot. I forgot to film, because I'm a professional at this, and I skipped the part that y'all probably want to see the most, which was the crystals and how I colored them. But yeah, now I'm just adding a little bit of blood effects on Sombra, and of course, they are bright red and not multiply, because there is no multiply in traditional art. But yeah, I really like how this turned out. I love the white highlights that I added with my gel pen and everything. And I'll rate this an 8.5 out of 10, just because of how happy I am with this piece, since it's the first time I actually did traditional art this way. And it just looks really neat, and Sombra's eye looks so shiny and creepy and gross and wrong, and it's perfect. I'm way happier with this one than the Draw This in Your Style I did kind of a long while ago, where I drew Cadence with crystals coming out of her. That was one that I wasn't happy with, but this is better. Now, day 9, I think, is poisoned. Maybe day 8. I messed up with the number on this one. Because I'm very smart and I know numbers, and I totally did not just mess up what day it was. I just forgot. I had it right in front of me. It was on that Goretober card, but who cares? It's fine. And the prompt for this one was poisoned, as I said already. And this is the second one where I just thought that the prompt was way too boring for me to actually like draw. So instead I just drew a skull, and I chose a goose for this, because geese are really cool animals in my opinion. Like, they're so like scary. I'm terrified of geese. If I see a goose like outside or on a farm or whatever, then I'm just like, I will not go close to that thing. But at the same time, I kind of admire them, because they're just like the bringers of chaos, and especially in the queer community, they're like kind of the spirit animal of everybody. And I also picked a goose for this prompt because there is actually a species of goose that is venomous. It's not the same as poisonous, but close enough. I don't care about biological accuracy for Goretober. I'm just drawing stuff, you know, it doesn't matter if I get the terminology right. But yeah, I just think that that's super interesting, and that's actually something that I found out while researching for this video specifically, because I was searching for an animal which I could use for this drawing and that I could use the skull from, and I was like, okay, maybe what are like interesting venomous animals or poisonous animals, and I just stumbled upon the fact that there is in fact a goose species that is venomous, and I was like, okay, no, that's perfect because I love geese. They're such cool animals, but at the same time terrifying. Also, geese have teeth, and I just think that that's really interesting because, like, when you think of birds, like, birds don't have teeth, they have beaks, right? But no, geese have teeth, and that's even more terrifying. So I don't know, I just think I hit the jackpot with the animal I chose for this one. The drawing of this, again, really simple, really quick, and it's a little bit brighter in values than the Nosebleed one, but it's fine. I will adjust the values later, eventually, at some point in the future. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get to it because I just keep forgetting, but I want to make these drawings of the skulls look really coherent and matching and nice together. But yeah, the background, again, I just did the same thing with kind of like the gradient with the light and stuff. It's really simple, just like if you don't feel like drawing a background, make it look slightly gradiented. And I submerged the top of the skull in shadow to make it look a little bit more mysterious. And now I'm starting to add the actual like poison / venom or whatever in bright green because it looks kind of radioactive. At first I just thought that this would be the sketch color that I then changed to something darker, but in the end I ended up kind of keeping it at least half the way because I really liked how it looked and makes the entire thing look radioactive, and I just think that that's pretty badass and stuff. So I kept it in. This definitely is pretty interesting for my drawings, and again, something a little bit more abstract and not as realistic. I mean, my style is really cartoony, and in that sense, this is one of the more realistic drawings I've done over Goretober, but at the same time, it's just that the entire concept feels very surrealistic and artistic and stuff, and looking at this, I just feel like, oh yeah, now I'm an actual artist because I'm making this art that needs interpretation and stuff, and you can't just look at it and go like, oh yeah, this character died. So that's something new. Also, I had absolutely no idea beside this what I wanted to do with actually the prompt. Like, if I hadn't come up with that idea with the skull, then I'd have no idea what I'd draw. Maybe like, you know, a glass of green liquid or whatever, something boring. Here you can see how bright I keep it. I just set it on overlay, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, now I'm just adding my signature, and that's pretty much the entire piece. And this piece looks pretty nice in my opinion. I'll be rating it a 6 out of 10 because it's really simple. Day 10 was Hanahaki Disease, and this was another big speed paint. This was the sketch that I did for Day 7, or Gutspill, originally, but then I just thought, okay, no, actually there are like flowers in her hair and stuff, and I just thought that would actually do really well as a Hanahaki Disease piece. So instead I just changed the pose, make her look forward and stuff like that, and this is such a nice drawing in the end. I love how it turned out. It looks very nice, and the colors are just so pleasant to look at, and it's my phone background. I'm not going to lie, it's my phone background. And yeah, sketching and drawing all the flowers definitely wasn't very fun, but if I ever were to like make a t-shirt design or whatever, then I'd probably make like drawings for all the other main 6 too, just to make them match and be able to go together really nicely like that. Or with the flowers, maybe they'd have different flowers or different colors of flowers or whatever have you, and that would be really cool in my opinion. So I'm just line arting this now with my usual line arting style. You can see how much hair there is. Hair actually isn't the difficult part of the line art. The wings are so much more difficult and tiring and annoying, and the flowers in this one were just like the wings because they don't need that much detail themselves, but there's just so many of them that gets annoying after a while. so I had to suffer through that. But I otherwise really enjoy how the line art looks, so it's definitely worth it, and like, I couldn't give this part of the process away. I definitely couldn't, which is why this still is like my main big art style I use for drawing, for my big drawings, because it just looks so detailed and nice and pleasant, and I really like it. And you can see that I'm skipping and avoiding drawing the wing because wings are a pain. And I love drawing wings and sketching wings, but they're just so tiring to work on and actually render and line art, that I just always dread that part of the process. And here I'm actually getting to the coloring, which I really love how the colors look. Like, Fluttershy's colors are so pleasant to look at, so like pastel, nice and pretty, and then mixed with that like bone white and the pale pink of the flowers, and it just looks very like surreal and pastel and nice. Like, if I look at just a flat colored piece, then I'm like, I'd wear this on a t-shirt. I say that all I say it all the time right now, but you know, the colors are really pleasant to look at in my opinion, even with the pops of red from the gore or soft tissue, I guess. And here we can see again, I had to color in all these flowers by hand, and then I just shaded it and did the lighting really simply, and then I added a second layer of shading, which is kind of more direct and showing the light source or where the actual light is coming from. The other simple lighting and shading is just from a simple like top-down sort of daylight situation shading, while the shading on top of that adds more like a light source that's just the main light source and also the main shadows, and I generally keep them on relatively high opacity multiply. And you can see the wing again. The wings are tiring to work on, but I still love the process, so you know, also that's the reason why my OC doesn't have like feathered wings, because I just can't with rendering those, especially if I had to like make and draw my OC over and over with like different expressions or whatever. I would absolutely not want to do that while having to draw wings over and over or have to render them fully. Speaking of my OC, I actually haven't shown you guys yet, but I can change the mode my OC is in, so they have a skull on their head, like this, or, you know, they can take their skull off. I'll keep it on right now because I think it looks pretty fun. And the lower jaw is just kind of jumping around. So that's very cute too. I did this model, I had to make it work on a Mac computer, which wasn't ideal. It was really difficult to work out how the program actually works. But I think I managed to make it work in the end, and it looks really nice, and I'm super proud of it. It's one of my favorite things probably about this video, and just so you know, like, this video isn't just me talking over the drawings I did already. It's also me, like, making new art just by working on this PNG tuber and stuff. But yeah, back to the actual drawing that I'm working on here. Again, shading the flowers, a lot of work, but I try to keep them relatively bright just to make them pop a lot and stuff. I think later I add a little bit more shading to them, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, now I'm just adding the main light, and I really struggled with the colors on this one, especially with the background and stuff. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the lighting and the shading, and like if I wanted it to be blue or pink or whatever have you. You'll see that in a short moment. But, you know, it was a struggle to figure out, but in the end I think I did, and this is definitely one of the pieces I'm happiest with, besides the last one, because that is like the magnum opus of Goretober, in my opinion. Yeah, here you can see how I like am changing the background to a darker color and the shading to be pink. Pink just doesn't stick around because I just didn't think it worked, or it didn't just work for me. I didn't like how it looked. But yeah, exactly, here I'm changing it to pink, and then I'm adding like a halo, and at this moment in the speed paint I thought that this drawing looked like really Christian for some reason, you know, like someone ascending to the heavens or whatever. I'm I'm agnostic or whatever, so it really doesn't matter to me. But I just thought that was pretty funny. I just want to mention that here. And now I'm just working on the background and adding the final highlights, which I add on top of the line art. And again, they just really make the silhouette pop and make the entire piece look really nice. They can also add a little bit more. I treat most shading situations like it's rim lighting, because rim lighting always looks good in art. Like, quick tip for beginning artists: if you want to make a piece look good, use rim lighting. It's just the simplest way to make a piece really pop and look like professional and well shaded, and it's enough to have like a layer of shading and one layer of highlights, and that's actually enough in most cases. Of course, my shading style is a lot more complex than that, but that's just because I like to overcomplicate things for myself. But yeah, I'm literally just adding really simple highlights on the edges of pretty much everything to make it really pop, and I'm just adding a signature and making like a glow layer and stuff to make the entire piece pop. I think it's soft light, and now I'm adding the blood effects, and in this one they're relatively subtle and there actually isn't all that much blood, which I think is absolutely wonderful and looks great in this instance. This is probably one of my favorite like pieces that I did with blood effects in it, or like my favorite blood effects that I did. It looks super nice, and I have to give this piece a 10 out of 10 just because how pretty it is. And yes, I will have to go over the 10 when talking about day 31, but who cares? I don't. It doesn't matter. It's fine. This piece is just super pretty and I love it a lot. Day 11 was insects, and from the best day of Goretober we go to the worst. I struggled with this piece. I had no inspiration. I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I was doing. So I just drew Rarity's redesign, or my Rarity redesign, and you know, she looks super nice. It's just that the gore effects and stuff just don't look very good. And I think one of the main issues is just like how the holes look. They don't look creepy enough, and like I don't have trypophobia, so I can't really judge that, but you know, from what I've seen other artists do with this sort of concept, you know, I didn't do a very good job. I'll have to redraw this piece sometime in the future or just make it look better. I was again kind of stressing for time with this one. I probably was working on it relatively late, and I just didn't feel like making something special or big for this one. And the shading is also really simple. I just used one of my color palettes for shading that I have set up some time ago that just has like 3 layers or whatever of shading, and it's really simple. It's literally just this blue color, then kind of airbrushed over it with like a red color just to add a little bit of variation to the shading, and then some highlights. And the shading in this actually looks really nice, and I love how it turned out. It's just that the gore isn't convincing enough for it to actually sell the drawing. In this case, like, usually the gore and the blood is what makes the drawing good, but in this case, if I were to remove it, I think it would make the whole drawing better. Just being very honest here. Here you can see the highlights, really simple, really, like, easy, but I think they add a lot, especially with the hair and stuff. They just look super pleasant and stuff. I love how Rady looks in this, and her eye especially, how the colored line art looks with it. It's just that, again, the holes ruin it. Like, they aren't pretty or whatever. They're not supposed to be pretty, but like, they don't look nice. I'll have to redo this one at some point in the future just to make it look at least serviceable, I guess. I mean, look at it, right? It's not particularly great. I have to give this a 3 out of 10, sadly. Day 12 was Bruised, and again, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing for this one, so I just redesigned Applejack. I was just sketching out poses for this, just brainstorming ideas, and I settled on this pose, which I then drew with my redesigned Applejack in mind, because at this point I set out to draw each of my redesigns at least once. Like, this Goretober has quite a few mini-series basically within it. It has my redesigned main 6, the normal main 6, my redesigned princesses, the normal princesses, and the normal CNC, because they don't have redesigns quite yet. I'm planning on to make those. I have some ideas for Squiddly specifically, for Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, not so much quite yet, but I think that would be pretty fun to do. So I will in the future, just not right now. And there's also a miniseries, of course, of the 3 skulls and whatever. But yeah, as you can see, there's quite a lot going on. And for this one, I actually used my normal line arting style, but a simpler shading style. I used only 2 shading layers instead of the usual 4. Or, like, you know, I added highlights in the eye and whatever, but I don't really count that here. And the line art was relatively simple for this one. The pose kind of made it relatively easy to line art, but it made it way more difficult to color, as you'll see shortly. The redesigns, especially the ones that have a lot of gradients, are really, really, really difficult to render, just because gradients are hard to work with when you have poses like this that have a lot of overlapping limbs. So this was an absolute pain to work on, but I think I managed to make it work at least a little bit. Gradients are difficult to work with in settings like this, where you just have a pose with a character and the character has gradients on them. But, you know, it wasn't easy, but I managed to push through and make it work. At least I hope I did. I really enjoy Applejack's design overall. I think that they look super nice, and I love the colors, and just, like, in general, their vibe. Like, I'd love to be their friend, honestly. And they also have scars from just working on, like, a farm or whatever. Like, I'd imagine that they'd get injured quite a lot. But for this drawing, I have no idea what happened to them. Somebody asked in a comment, like, what happened to Applejack here? Like, they're innocent. What just happened to them? And I just answered, like, I don't know. Maybe, like, tumbled down a hill or something. And, like, I pray, I really hope that that's what happened, because otherwise I really don't like to think about what would have happened if they, like what the alternative is, because that just doesn't sound nice. But yeah, Applejack has these really nice mane colors and tail colors too. Like, it really reminds me of pistachio and chocolate ice cream, and I don't know why it's so specific and such useless information, but it just does. It just does remind me of that a lot, and I quite like that, actually. Like, it's super pretty. And now I'm just adding the bruises, and I really tried to make them, like, look serviceable, which wasn't easy. I just really experimented with layers and, like, ways to layer them in. Then I added the background, and I skipped the process of me making the grass, because that's actually just me drawing a grass tuft and copy and pasting it all over, like, where the grass is supposed to be, and repeating that just with many different colors, and it's not really that exciting to look at. I actually figured out that there, in fact, is, like, a grass brush or something similar to a grass brush in my art program. I just hadn't found it until a few days after I drew this, so, you know, I might mix that with this style of grass in the future, just make it look a little bit nicer, because this looks kind of empty in my opinion. But the shading is really simple. It's just green shadows and yellow highlights, and it's just 2 layers, but I think it works really well in this sort of setting. Also, in the beginning, I really wasn't convinced that this was going to work, because the background wasn't working out, the blurry trees and bushes didn't like work at all, the grass looked odd, but in the end I'm really happy with how it turned out. Like, color-wise, it just looks so pleasant and kind of cozy and stuff, and, like, I love the colors in this piece, just the green and the yellow. It's a better version of Fluttershy from the Def series, honestly, which I'm not happy with the colors on that piece. But yeah, I'll rate this one a 6.5 out of 10 because I like the shading and the colors. Day 13 was Stitches, and I knew right away what I wanted to draw. I just struggled a bit with the execution. So, you all probably know Sunlight Glitter from the Death series. She was featured in Celestia's Death, or Celestia's Experiment. And yeah, she's Celestia's Experiment. She's supposed to be sort of the perfect student for Celestia, but she ended up coming to life while unfinished. So she has the stitches all over her body and just generally looks really like messy and is really asymmetrical and stuff. But I'd imagine her to actually be really nice to be around and actually really gentle and stuff. And I definitely want to write some in-betweens for the Death series with her, or like featuring her, while her not being like a major player, because that never was what she's supposed to be. And at first I actually colored her in with just the normal colors, but then I decided that didn't really look how I wanted. I wanted her to have really bright colors in this piece and for it to just be super bright, so I instead used the Cartoon Network limited color palette, because who doesn't love combining multiple challenges into one? And I used some Pantones and whatever, no, that it's not the word, the dots and stuff. And I added then the word subjective, because I think beauty is subjective and stuff like that, and it just adds a lot of meaning to this piece and yada yada. And I rate this a 7 out of 10, just the average score. It's pretty nice. This piece, I have mixed feelings about it. The way it looks like it was drawn by a 3-year-old child, but the background I basically traced it from a photo, just made it slightly more painterly to match the way I'd rendered the whale, because I knew I wouldn't be able to match like photorealism. That's just not what I'm about. I'm not good at doing realistic stuff most of the time. My normal art style, it has a lot of line art, it has cel shading, it has all that stuff that's generally more cartoony or cartoon leaning, while this is like a lineless, realistic sort of found footage piece. And it's like the worst version of Day 4, I think. But again, like, the prompt for this was Parasite, so it was just like, okay, so what am I going to draw for this? And I was like, well, if there was like a giant parasite living inside the whales, that would be kind of terrifying, right? And honestly, I think it kind of is, but at the same time, it just really isn't the way to go about it, to draw it. I said this already, but I just think that the whale, like, it's flashing on screen a little bit now. Yeah, now I'm doing the whale. It looks like it was drawn by a child. That is not what I was going for. Like, the tail is way too long, the pose just doesn't work. But, what can you do? What's done is done. And I actually probably realized this only after I was pretty much finished with the piece, which sucks, because otherwise I could have fixed it while working on it, but what can you do? And I really tried to match shading of the background image, at least a little bit, and make the whale look at least a little bit realistic, like shading wise and stuff. And I think it looks fine. Like, it's not perfect, it doesn't look quite realistic, but not that I was ever going to be able to do that, very honestly. And I desaturated it a bit more because I didn't want it to be blue, but instead like gray or something. And its belly is also like this bright red. I really don't know what to say about this. It's just the whale lying on the beach. I'm messing up words right now. I'm kind of tired and I've been recording for about an hour now, so this video is really long and I don't have a script, so whatever. But now I'm working on the Parasite, and it's just crawling out of the belly of the whale, and it's like this worm insect thing because insects look nasty. This should have been a drawing for insects, though, you know, this one isn't much better, honestly. I can't give this one a high rating either. I don't like how it turned out, mostly because of the tail of the whale, and yes, I will keep ranting about that. But yeah, I just shaded the insect, trying to make it at least a little bit like realistic or whatever. I don't think I quite succeeded because I just don't quite have the skill level yet to be able to make things realistic like this. But I just tried to color adjust everything and make it look like it fits into the photo, into the scene and stuff. And I gave the whale a mouth, and now I'm just adding another multiply layer to make it actually fit in with the background, and then I'll add shadows so it doesn't look like it's just floating in space, not being attached to the image in any way whatsoever. And I think that helps at least a little bit. Also, the worm doesn't have legs quite yet. Right now it just looks like a naked blob. Which honestly, that's not that scary. Like, a worm without legs like that, I don't know if I would be scared of it. Like, I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't be terrified. Now I'm just adding the legs, and yeah, they're legs. They're long, they're nasty, and they didn't turn out quite perfectly because I didn't really want to readjust my brush size, because then I knew that I'd add more detail or whatever, and I want to avoid that because otherwise I'd have to go over the entire image, and I really didn't want to do that. And I tried to light it in a similar way that I did the worm and stuff, just match the entire piece again. And in the end I didn't add a lot of like free VHS effects on top of it or whatever, just with my editing app to try to make it look at least serviceable, and I think that it works. At least I hope it does. I mean, it doesn't look realistic, but you know, it looks at least a little bit like something, I guess. I'm just again adding more shadows to the whale, trying to match it, trying to match the scene. And then I struggled to add my signature because I want to work with only the brush that I used for the entire piece. And I added some simple blood effects, nothing fancy, just some blood, some highlights, and then we're done. This is the finished piece without the filters, and here it is with the filters, and I have to give this a 4 out of 10. Day 15 was Fungi, and this is one that I'm much happier with than the previous one, or even Day 2. This one is also one that I did lineless, and I think this time I actually succeeded in making it work while lineless. Again, it's not a style that I'm very used to, and not a style that I'm very good at, but this time it actually worked out, mostly because of the lighting situation that I actually chose for this piece. And basically I'm drawing my Fluttershy redesign being like overgrown by fungi or whatever, kind of like the fungi parasites that go over like insects or stuff and grow out of their bodies. Like, it's really terrifying to think about, but at the same time it looks kind of beautiful, you know. And Fluttershy's redesign I think looks really nice, but it's also really difficult to do. This pose luckily was relatively simple and not as complex as like Applejack's pose or whatever. But like the gradients from green to pink definitely aren't something easy to do. And I needed like a transitioning color and stuff to make it not look too muddy and airbrushy and stuff, and I think I actually kind of succeeded on that, at least I hope I did. Like, I really associate Fluttershy with like the forest and animals and plants and all that stuff and flowers, so it was the first poem that came to mind when I said that, yeah, I'm going to draw a fungi piece today. And the butterflies on her body are not very accurate to the actual like concept art / artwork / character sheet or whatever, but like nobody cares. I can't even say which ones are wrong, so it doesn't matter. It's fine. her design, again, not animation friendly at all. I would not wish this upon my worst enemy, like, to animate this. Now I'm just adding, like, the holes in her belly and her eye and stuff, and shading her with just a soft eraser. I added a layer on top of her, and then set it to multiply, made it like purple, and started like erasing it with the soft eraser because that generally looks better than the airbrush. And this was the ugly stage of the piece. Like, it did not look good at all. Even with the lighting added, it did not look very good. And I was kind of like a little bit desperate even. I had very low hopes for this piece, so that was why I was like so surprised that it turned out so well, or like as well as did, you know, especially with the mushrooms, because I made the mushrooms glow. A little spoiler, because what's better than mushrooms? It's glowing mushrooms, of course. I just love the vibe that fungi have in general. Also, while drawing this piece, I just kept making the pun that, like, if Fluttershy was like a guy, she'd be a fungi. I just couldn't stop because that's like the one pun with mushrooms, you know. So I just kept joking around with that while drawing this to myself, you know. Then I just added her ribs. Nothing fancy there. I had to try to match the edges of the actual like hole in her belly. And now I'll also add like some blood effects, which will be really, really simple. Because, you know, there's a hole in her belly, of course, she needs some blood effects there. And there's not that much blood, but I think it works fine because this piece isn't really all that much focused on the blood. It's instead focused on like the mushrooms and their glow, which, speaking of that, I'm now adding the little glowing parts, which are just a light pink, and I added another multiply layer just to give the entire piece like a purple feeling, and I think that looks super nice, and I really love the glowing of the mushrooms. It's like my favorite thing right now. Just the decision to make them pink and not, for example, blue or something, it has such a mood to it, in my opinion, and I really love that. And I just added some more glow and like little spores around her and stuff. Maybe there are fireflies, or I don't know, because that's like also something to see around mushrooms. And this is also the day where I figured out that I actually do have a grass brush, because I did not feel like making an entire background. So I tried to find a grass brush, and I did find one in my drawing app. It was there in the presets, but, you know, I just had never bothered to use it or find it anywhere. And then I just added some highlights on the entire piece to make the silhouette pop a little bit more, and just add a little bit of that detail that the lineless style is lacking, at least a tiny bit, in my opinion, and especially because I don't know how to do lineless properly. You know, it's a little bit simple. So I just added some highlights to add some of the definition back. I keep showing you how I highlight things. I just think that's pretty fun to watch. Then I added some highlights on some grass around her and trees in the background, which I think really add to the atmosphere of the piece and make the background just look so much better. This is such a nice piece, and it turned out so moody in the end, which I'm really surprised by, because in the beginning I really did not think much of it. But yeah, I have to rate this piece an 8 out of 10. I really like how it turned out. Day 16 was hooks, and this was a redraw of the piece I did in 2021. You can see it on screen. And I did it for day 3 of Goretober back then, and I wasn't happy with how it looked back then, and right now I'm not happy with how it looked either. The colors just feel really flat, and the proportions are strange, and the art style just doesn't work at all, in my opinion. The execution just isn't very good. Like, the concept is relatively solid, the execution just isn't. So I decided to redraw it, because the name or like the prompt hooks really reminded me of this piece, so I was just like, yeah, I can do it. And I did it with my Pinkie Pie redesign this time because I hadn't used that yet, and I really felt like using it also to just complete the sub-series of the main 6 redesigns. And again, I skipped the coloring because that always takes a long time. And this piece was really, actually really simple, but especially like shading wise, it was just 2 layers, I think, and then highlights, but it worked out really well. And if you look, once you see the mouth, again, you can actually kind of see the expression Pinkie Pie is actually making without the hook pulling or like tearing her face apart, which I think just adds so much, and that was definitely something that the old piece was lacking, because they just looked like Pinkie had this really, really wide smile, and it just didn't work, while with this one, it works. it looks good. And you can tell that she's like definitely not smiling and not happy right now. You can see it really well. And yeah, I really like the redesign I did for Pinkie, because she really feels like happy and stuff, I think, even with the redesign. And I don't really like her OG color palette, honestly. It has grown on me over time, definitely, and I love it a lot, but the colors still just, in my opinion, aren't all that appealing to look at. And when I first started like getting into the series, I definitely liked her the least just because of her design. So instead, in my redesign, I give her more muted colors and stuff, and also complemented the rosy sort of yellow, the rosy sort of pink with yellow, because I think that's just a really pretty color combination. And you now can see me adding the hooks. They're not really all that visible in this drawing, which it was the prompt, so they could have been a little bit more visible, but otherwise I really like how it looks. And the blood effects on this also just look really great, in my opinion. They work just so well and make it look like so creepy. Like, I can't but imagine just what, like, how she got into the situation and like what actually happened, because I don't know. I have no idea. Back in 2021, I think I had some sort of concept of how she got into it, but that was 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and I don't know anymore. But yeah, I in the end really like how this piece turned out, and I added these really bright blue highlights, which I think just work so well, and it makes the entire piece just look so much more appealing. And I'll rate this one a 7 out of 10. It's really nice to look at. Again, the highlights just make it pop so much, unlike the old piece. Day 17 was plant growth, and for this one I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure if I would be able to execute it. This was another like big sort of piece. The speedpaint was, I think, 10 minutes long, maybe 12. But I drew the Owl House characters, slight spoilers for season 3, I guess. But I basically drew the scene from season 3, episode 2, where Willow has her mental breakdown and all the plants like grow around her and stuff. But I was like, okay, I need to add some blood, otherwise it wouldn't be really good enough for Goretober. But yeah, so I just added some slight blood. It's definitely not the most gory piece, I guess, but it's fine. And I'm really surprised with how well I managed to actually like draw the humanoid characters, like they're witches, they're not humans, but still it's really close, and their faces are like the same to human faces, and generally I just really struggle with that, so I was really happy with how this turned out. I don't think I even really need to like flip the canvas a lot or whatever to make it work, but they still just managed to look so good and like pleasant to look at. The proportions don't look uncanny or whatever, and they actually look like somebody who knows how to draw humans drew them, which isn't really accurate, but I'm super happy how it turned out. And in the beginning I actually thought that I was going to make this piece in grayscale, because I just started blocking in some of the values, which is not something that I do very often like this, but I really felt like trying that out. So I didn't color pick any of the values, I just guessed them and like what they were supposed to be. And I did that for the entire piece for Gus, Hunter, and Willow, and then the plants. But then in the end I actually decided that it would be better if I added color, because I really had this nice like idea in mind for like the color grading of the plants. So I decided that in the end I want to add color which I then added over top of it. And I made the really bad mistake that I didn't make a separate like alpha mask layer for the characters and the plants, which made it really difficult with the coloring later. But it was fine. In the end, it turned out fine. I think it just wasn't the easiest thing to deal with. So I struggled with that a bit, actually, like more than sketching the humans, which was surprising, considering how much I usually struggle with them. The shading for the plants was really simple. I basically just added 2 values or 3 values and just kind of pulled again a little bit of back and forth just to get them look nice, and stuff. I didn't add any spikes to them because that would be just way too much work. But in the end, I still think that like I can imagine how the surface of the plants would feel like. They would be like pretty rough and even sharp in places maybe. And yeah, here you can see me just adding the colors for Willow. And again, I was just guessing at the values and the hues and everything. So Willow's hair, for example, turned out much brighter than I expected it to turn out. But yeah, in the end, I think it works fine. And it looks good enough, so, Again, I'm really happy with how I managed to pull off the expressions and stuff. That is something that I think that's a first. And here you can see me just adding a little bit of blood effects. It's nothing crazy or extreme, and I barely need to give a warning for this one. It's just I felt more like drawing this piece and this composition rather than actually doing something gory with it or whatever. But yeah, I rate this a 6 out of 10. It's not my favorite piece, but it looks fine and I'm happy with the expressions. Day whatever was Cannibalism, and here I really struggled with it. I decided to draw Nightmare Moon kind of eating Celestia, but with my redesigns, because I hadn't drawn neither Princess Celestia nor Princess Luna actually. But I really struggled with this piece, and I also didn't have a lot of time for it. Like, Princess Celestia's design has so many gradients, and it was an absolute pain to color. And for Nightmare Moon, I had to come up with an original design just for this one drawing, because she doesn't have a redesigned design yet, I guess. So I just winged it, but I think in the end it actually turned out pretty nice, and I really like the design. I might even like make a full concept sheet for it. But yeah, the pose is nothing special. I kind of drew inspiration from that one piece Blitz Azali's Dash did, which I hadn't like referenced it directly. I hadn't pulled it up or anything. I just just be aware that I knew that that piece exists and that this is kind of similar to it, but I swear I didn't like copy it or whatever because I literally hadn't pulled it up or whatever. But yeah, here you can see me just kind of experimenting to make a design for Nightmare Moon, and basically I decided to just reverse her colors, sort of, just to make the darks really bright and the brights really dark, and also her cutie mark is reversed, and now I decided to kind of add a transition between the really bright and the really dark, which I think just helps make it look so much better. I don't know, it just reminds me of like space and the moon and stuff, and it's really pleasant to look at in my opinion. And yeah, I just did some relatively simple shading and then added this really strong rim lighting because I said this already, rim lighting makes everything look better, I guess, and this piece just really needed it, in my opinion. It's still not the best piece, and it's definitely one of the ones that I struggled with just finishing because I didn't have time that day, or I didn't have enough time to like properly finish it and then like look at it from a distance and just fix it basically in the end. But that happens. That's the challenge. I have to live with it. I used this really strong color palette of just dark blue and like this orangey yellow because that's kind of like the colors I associate with like Luna and Celestia, right? So it just reflects in the shading and lighting and also just with the characters, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, this piece still isn't quite the best, but I do like the blood effects that I'm adding right now. I always sometimes add them in like a really bright neon color just so I can properly see what I'm doing, and then I turn them into this dark red. And yeah, this piece isn't perfect, so I'll be rating it a 5 out of 10. It could be much better. Day 19 was bites, and I had something in mind right away. I forgot to record the very first part, but basically I drew Discord and Fluttershy because I just thought that was, a good idea. And this is the first piece, or like the only piece pretty much, that I actually did only line art and no real coloring. And this was something that I had planned at this point for a few days. I had wanted to do a piece that is just line art or just grayscale or something like that, but I just never got to it because when I finished the line art, I just started adding values, and I was like, okay, no, values isn't enough, I can add color onto it, and then in the end, it always just ended up being an entire finished piece with color. But here I started with the concept in mind that I want this to be just line art, so I did the line art a little bit more detailed and a little bit more like value differentiation, I guess, just to get it to look the way I want it, and I think in the end it worked out relatively well. Obviously Discord is like a dragon-like creature, so he was an absolute pain to draw. Scales just take a lot of time, or like big creatures like this in general just take a lot of time, but I'm really happy with how I did it because he just ends up looking really nice, and the transition between his head and body parts just it's not the prettiest, but what can you do, it's fine. The legs also aren't quite perfect, and I had to like look up what Discord looked like because his design isn't the simplest to just draw from memory. But yeah, I literally just did my classic line art style with the tons and tons of detail. I feel really comfortable with this line art style actually. Like, it does take some time, and when I did it for the first 3 times, it was definitely like this feeling of like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? This is taking so long, but I have definitely gotten a lot faster with it. Like, now I can just push this out in one day, while earlier, before I actually got used to it, it took me like a week or something to just finish a piece that wasn't even that complex. And yeah, here I just kind of am cross-hatching with like a cross-hatching brush. So I just was experimenting with some new brushes, and I think that it works really well, and it looks really like comic-y, I guess. Again, this is something that I'd wear on a t-shirt, honestly. And yeah, I just added like this sort of like abstract sort of background because that just looks neat in my opinion. Then I again added an outline because that just makes the silhouette pop and makes it look really nice. And then I actually experimented with some colors for it because I wasn't sure what would look best. I think I settled on like a pink, but you know, the blue and yellow variation also work really well in my opinion. And then I just added some pure black shadows, which I think just help so much. They make the entire piece look absolutely amazing in my opinion, and like literally like it's out of a comic book or whatever, and I think that's really neat, and I definitely want to draw a little bit more in this style in the future just because it's so pretty to look at, honestly. Like the harsh contrast of the black and the white, and it having literally no color, it works so well. And yeah, now I'm just adding a little bit of blood because everyone needs a little bit of blood. And I love this piece. I'll rate it a 7.5 out of 10. I'm being really inconsistent with my rating system, but it's fine. Day 20 was Vomit, and I really didn't feel like doing this one because the prompt was just really gross, and it just felt really nasty. So instead of like drawing something, you know, gross and nasty and weird and just, yeah, not nice to look at, I instead opted to draw Blitz from Hell of Voss because in this one scene in season 1 episode 8 he just vomits all over the floor, and I think it looks really funny. It's pretty funny. So I just decided to draw that in like the silliest art style, you know, of those two big eyes staring into all the wrong directions, and it actually took me like 3 tries to get the vomit to look serviceable. It's still not perfect, but it looks fine enough. But yeah, this was actually like my third attempt at it or whatever, and I, in the original Speedpaint video, I just added like the copyright-free music on top of it, and I literally died laughing while editing that video. Like it was perfect. And now I'm just coloring in the couch and Blitz and everything, and I handpicked those colors because I really didn't feel like adding like a color adjustment layer or whatever, so I just made up the colors as I went, and I think that they work really well and they look super nice. Like that white that's actually like a beige sort of orangey nasty yellow whatever, it just looks so nice, and the desaturated red, I just think it works so well. Like this color palette, it kind of channels I don't know whose art style, but somebody's art style, and I love it. It just has such a vibe to it, in my opinion, the colors that I used here. And I'm just really happy with just the colors because it's such a silly drawing. You know, this is like the break of Goretober because this doesn't have any gore or any blood or any like really horror elements. It's just a little silly video of just like, you know, basically a redraw of that one scene in season 1 episode 8, right at the end. And yeah, I just did some really simple shading, nothing fancy, nothing special. I'm also not very good at drawing furniture, but this couch, it looks serviceable, you know, it's not perfect, but it looks fine enough, in my opinion, I think. And I'm just kind of gradienting the entire piece just to make it look slightly better, I guess. And then I'm just adding some slightly yellow highlights, because pure white highlights just wouldn't fit this piece, in my opinion. And then I'm just adding some droplets to the vomit, because it being just this one blob just doesn't feel really right. It's still not perfect, but I think it's funny and it's really cartoony, and you know, I can live with it. So yeah, I'll be rating this drawing a 6 out of 10. It's not the best drawing in itself, but it's really funny in my opinion. Day 21 was Lacerations, and I knew pretty much immediately what I want to do with this one. And that, of course, was draw the scene from the friendship test, where Rainbow Dash, you know, gets lacerations. Basically, the friendship test is, for those who don't know, an MLP fanfic. Like one of the bigger ones, I think. And it's one of my favorites. It's very good, and the tests are really smart. Basically, it's about Starlight Glimmer being really jealous of Twilight and her friends, like the elements of harmony in general, and putting them through a series of tests that twist like the elements of harmony in all the wrong ways, and just kill most of the main 6. And I won't spoil the ending, but this is like, I think, the first test, I'm pretty sure. Maybe the second one. It has to be the second one. I think it's the second test, where basically each pony gets to choose either to brand the pony to the right or to give free whiplashes to Rainbow Dash. And it's the test of loyalty. And, you know, it's really like creepy, and it's a horrifying story in general. And for the actual drawing, I just rendered it in my usual style that I use for, you know, my bigger drawings. And that was mostly because this day I had quite a lot of time. I had literally nothing on my program. I was traveling, so I was just sitting most of the day doing pretty much nothing, and, you know, of course, then I had a lot of time for drawing, so I just worked on this piece. And at first I really wasn't sure if the expression was going to work, because the proportions were slightly more cartoony than usual, but in the end I really like it, especially how she's like biting her lip and stuff. And the pose isn't really anything special at this point, you know, like a few months ago, or like, you know, if a few months, I mean like half a year ago or something, it might have been relatively challenging to draw, but right now I'm just so used to drawing, you know, ponies lying down in this sort of manner that it literally like isn't an issue. And I was really surprised with how the actual wounds turned out, especially with the shading. Like, you'll see that in a while once I'm done with the main shading and lighting and stuff. But they actually turn out looking really nice with the line art also. Like, in the beginning I really wasn't sure if it was like going to work, if it was going to look good at all, because it wasn't looking good. It definitely had its ugly stages, or like ugly, like they just mean with that I just mean it wasn't looking like a really convincing piece or like the best piece, but I really liked how the shading looked and how everything looked. Just like overall, I'm also really happy with like that ring of magic around her. Right now it's just like a white circle, but in the end I didn't add a little bit of glow to it, and I think it just looks really nice and adds so much to the piece. Now I'm doing like the main shading, and there I was really trying to keep that ring of light in mind as the main light source, because it's just a really interesting lighting situation that, you know, I'm not used to, because generally light sources either come from above or below or the side or whatever, or even like behind or in front, but never around the character, you know, like literally as a ring around them. Like that's something that is definitely like unusual. But I think that made it a little bit more of a challenge to draw and, you know, something to learn from. And now the shading isn't quite perfect, but I think it looks fine enough. And yeah, and I'm just adding the bud effects, which again, I'm really happy with. I found this kind of new technique where I'm just making some really big splotches and then kind of partly erasing them with a soft eraser, and it just makes it look so good and so nice. And I use this on next to drawing, I think, too. And it just works so well. Yeah, and with the ground, like this is also one of the things I'm really happy with about the drawing. It's literally like the floor, which is a thing that you won't be looking at a lot, I don't think. Like you'll be looking at her expression and the shading and stuff, not the floor, but I'm really happy with how the floor looks. It just looks textured and real, and she actually looks like she is in that place, actually touching the floor. So I'll rate this a 9 out of 10. Day 22 was Silver Platter. And with this one, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I also wasn't quite sure. I was kind of contemplating like what characters I wanted to do, and then I thought about, okay, maybe I can do like Appleloom and Applejack, because then I can first off just draw all the CMC. It gave me that opportunity, and second off, you know, I like drawing Appleloom. I don't draw her enough. And it just seemed like an interesting idea or concept or stuff, you know. Yeah. So yeah. The line art, I was working in this sort of pinkish color because I'm pretty sure I was working on a different piece at the time too. Oh yeah. I know, it was the Draw This in Your Style, which, by the way, that video came out right after Goretober finished, so it's on my channel up right now. Go watch it after you finish this video. But I was shading with this really nice pink, and I just sketched in it because I wasn't bothered to change the color. And then I just kind of liked the color, and I was like, maybe I'll do colored line art or something. And in the end, I just end up working with like a monotone color palette, you know, as you can see right now. And with the shading, I basically just did airbrush shading in the end, which was a choice, and I'm still not sure like how happy I am about it, because in certain parts it works, in other parts it doesn't. Like with the metal, I think it works really well because cel shading metal is just not the easiest thing to do. And like rendering metal in general is not very easy. But yeah, I think that like working with, you know, drawing just drawing metal in general, it's easier to do it with like soft brushes or whatever. As you can see right now, this is how like the metal turned out, and it's not 100% realistic, especially that hard edge there, but I think it looks serviceable, and you can tell it's meant to be metal, and that's all that really matters in a drawing like this. The plate, again, metal, so because, you know, its name is Silver Platter, of course it's going to be like metal silver stuff. And for Appleloom, again, I just did her with the same airbrush I had used for the metal. And I really wasn't sure like how to do this because airbrushing is difficult and not something that I'd recommend artists do a lot, like with shading, because it's really difficult to use. It can be used, definitely, but most of the time it doesn't work. Even in my drawing here, in some parts it just didn't work, and I'll put up a drawing that I did in 2022, I think, that I shaded with the airbrush. You know, it doesn't look great, it doesn't look amazing, it looks weird. So yeah, this is the exact reason many beginning artists use the airbrush as just their default shading tool, and I definitely can't recommend it. Self-shading is just consistently easier to do in this sort of way, but like airbrushes definitely can be used, and they can be used very well. It's just, in my opinion, a little bit more difficult. So, you know, if you're beginning with art, maybe don't start using the airbrush, because like, try it, sure, but like, you know, you can't really expect the best results, because I've been doing digital art specifically for I don't know how long now, I think like 4 years or something, and I still can't really properly use the airbrush. Like, here I got lucky and Apple Bloom's head looks serviceable, but it's still not perfect. And it's definitely like, you know, it has its strong and its weak spots, this drawing. It's a toughie. Definitely. And I like parts of it, and I really hate other parts of it. I didn't show this here, but I really struggled with the salad, for example, or like the leaves or whatever. And I'll have to rate this a 3 out of 10 because I'm happy with the blood effects and Apple Bloom's head, but otherwise it's just bad. Day 23 was Impaled, and I did a kind of special style for this one. I did basically the MLP official show's rendering style, but like not drawing style, because I still kept my slightly less stylized proportions, slightly more realistic. I don't know, they're not all that realistic. Like, horse anatomy does not work like that, especially their legs, but you know. And I drew Shining Arm for this one. I got this idea basically at the beginning of Goretober, I think, when I was just skimming the list, and I was just like, I have to draw this for Goretober at some point. And I was, you know, obviously I drew it for this prompt because that was the prompt that came to mind, I guess. And basically the story for this one is that just, you know, Shining Armor was guarding the crystal palette or whatever, and he fell asleep and kind of was leaning on his spear the wrong way, and it just pierced right through his head. Yeah, that must have been a rude awakening. But I rendered the background in a lineless style because that's how the backgrounds in the show are rendered, and I think it looks really nice. It was a lot of fun to do. Not the easiest thing to do, but, you know, it was fun and it looks really nice. And I'm really happy with it, like, with the door and the stairs and everything. Even the shading, like, it looks quite pleasant. I didn't show the line art because colored line art is difficult and a lot of back and forth, and just, you know, recoloring line art because you went over the line or whatever. Going over the line when doing line art is kind of ironic, but, you know, you know what I mean. And the coloring, I just literally color picked the screenshots, and for this one, since it's done in sort of the show's art style, I didn't really do any shading at all. Also, I literally never use the show's eye colors because for most characters it's just a pure white, and I don't like using pure white in my drawings because it looks desaturated. I generally use either a pale yellow or orange or blue depending on the character, but here Shining Armor has like really blue eyes, I guess, so I just color picked that too. And now I'm just adding the blood, which is literally just this dark red, and I didn't even set it to multiply or anything because I think that it kind of fits the style. And honestly, this kind of feels like one of the OG sort of last episode creepypastas or whatever. Like, if I had matched the style a little bit more, or tried to match the style, I think that this would be perfectly serviceable if I like added a lot of VHS effects on it and maybe added some sort of animation. It could have been like one of those old school creepypastas from 2013 or whatever. I'll rate this a 6 out of 10. Day 24 was Amputation, and I didn't know what to do for this one in the beginning, but then I got the idea, okay, wait, what if Scootaloo got her wings amputated? That'd be like quite tragic, honestly. And this is like kind of mildly inspired by the Rainbow Factory, or like, any stories associated with it, because like the entire concept is that she's like not worthy of being a Pegasus and stuff, I guess. Like, Scootaloo, you're a valid Pegasus, just letting you know. But like, I just felt like doing a Linus style this day, so I did a Linus style. Sometimes it's just really fun to have this really like bubbly and soft shading of Linus style, because it's just super like pleasant to look at. It's not the easiest thing to render, and it does take a little bit of time, but in the end, the result is serviceable, I think. Basically what I did is I just shaded the entire thing, like cell shaded it with an alpha locked layer, then I added like a gradient to soften the shading a little bit, then I did lighting, and then I did a lighting gradient, and then I also added highlights. And I did this for every single piece of the body, and then the hair too. With the hair I segmented it a little bit, and I also added these like bubbly highlights, because that's what I like to do. And I kept the hair really saturated, because I think that just makes the entire, thing look better. And the hair has decidedly more highlights than the skin, or like, I guess, fur. But yeah, I still think that matches like together pretty well. The hooves were rendered the same way as the hair and the body, just, a shading layer, a shading gradient, a lighting layer, and a lighting gradient. It's relatively simple, and I used this style in line art hit art too, in some drawings, especially older drawings, The teeth, I struggled to find a color that fit, but I think it ended up working kind of well. I hope it did, at least, And with her eyes, I just try to keep them really like cartoony and pretty and shiny and stuff, because I think that really fits this really shiny art style, or rendering style, I guess. And for the eyelashes, I also added copious amounts of highlights, because this style really needs it, in my opinion. And the eyebrow, also really cartoony with that like kind of gash through it or whatever. The piece of this drawing that really breaks it is, in my opinion, like the gore effects, like the blood effects. If I were to change anything about this piece, it would be the blood effects, and I might actually just like redo them at some point in the future, just like literally the blood effects. Keep the entire drawing, just redo the blood, and it'll be perfect. Because like the bandages look fine, the very, very simple background looks fine, the shadow on the ground looks fine. The background is literally just a gray, sort of, not even room, just like a gray place. Yeah, here you can see the blood effects, and then I'm kind of struggling with like what I want to do with them, and it just like, it wasn't working, and it didn't end up working at all. So eventually I just gave up with a relatively small amount of blood effects. Especially on the bandages, there isn't that many blood effect, but I just don't think that they are very good, so I might want to change them in the future. I'm just adding a slight beam of light to just bring some more attention to Scootaloo. Again, I have no idea where he is in this drawing. Sometimes drawings just don't have that strong of a concept, and the blood, again, I'll have to rate this a 5 out of 10, I think, though I do like the rendering. Day 25 was bones, and I just felt like drawing a horse skeleton, and I did it in a slightly more realistic style. Like, it's still very cartoony, but I did reference a horse body just to get the hips right, especially. Like, I struggle with drawing hips or figuring out how they work, especially on animal skeletons. Like, humanoid skeletons aren't a problem, it's mostly like animal skeletons. And with this drawing, I did a lot of like what I call fake detail. Basically, it's when you like at these little swirls or lines that just kind of indicate detail that isn't really there, you know? Like when I do my usual style, that's what I'd call quote-unquote real detail, and this isn't like that, like it's more valid in art or whatever, it's just that that's detail that would be there if that thing would be real, you know? For example, fur or hair or whatever, you know, when you draw the separate strands, that's like quote-unquote real detail, while if you just like do a little spiral or whatever, like really stylized, then that's quote-unquote fake detail, you know? It doesn't make it any worse or any better, and I really enjoy both kinds of detail, or like mixing both kinds of detail. It's just that, you know, it makes sense to call it that, in my opinion, because it's just one type of detail is there, like if the thing was real, the other isn't. But yeah, my point is this drawing just has tons and tons of fake detail, which I think really is a fun art style, and I use this art style quite a lot actually in my sketchbook, like or like, you know, when I'm just doodling somewhere like on a piece of paper, I sometimes do use like an art style very similar to this, where I just add swirls and little lines and stuff, because it just looks so fun and it makes the entire piece look super nice. And for this I actually used just a brush that isn't very textured but has pressure sensitivity, which is different than both of my usual line arting brushes. And I think it gives this piece like a really interesting energy and makes it look really pleasant. Like I do love the line art on this piece. It just looks so fun in my opinion. And now I'm just doing the grass with a grass brush, and I'm also coloring the skeleton, and sort of like I added simple lighting indicators of just like where light would be coming from later. And yeah, I'm coloring the skeleton black because I just think that it really fits like the Halloween aesthetic, and at this point in Goretober I just really wanted like Halloween to be here because Christmas was everywhere, which I still don't get. Like, it's October, don't bring Christmas into this. It's 2 months away, right? Like November, I can accept that, I can live with it, but not October. That's too early for Christmas. So yeah, I did kind of a very Halloween piece for this one, of the color palette being purple and orange, and the bones being like black, which like black and orange, also classic color palette for Halloween and stuff. And now I'm just adding some of the glow effects, and I did them on the wrong layer. That's what you saw there, the quick backtracking. It hadn't seemed to the best of us. But yeah, I'm just kind of softening up. Again, it's with that soft brush that I found earlier in Goretober, and it just takes a little bit of back and forth to get it working, and for the shadows to look nice. And I'm just adding a multiply layer because, you know, multiply layers make the shading, make the lighting look more intense, and the shading, you know, it makes this drawing have shading in the first place, basically. But yeah, it also makes the bones look even darker, and I added slightly more lighting just because it wasn't quite enough, and I added some more brightness, just make it really pop, and I really like how this looks. By the way, this OC's name is Alistair, and it's like basically a horse that goes around on Halloween night and skins any children that are out too late still trick-or-treating, you know, just like a little bit of urban legending here on my part. When I was drawing it, I was just like thinking about, okay, but like, who is this? I've never drawn it, I don't know who it is, so yeah, this is Alistair, and I'll rate him a generous 7.5 out of 10, because even though you can't see the line art, it's really pretty. Day 26 was Puppet, and this was another relatively big drawing, and I knew what I wanted to do with this one, but I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. Spoiler alert, I did make it, and it turned out pretty nice. Like, it's one of the less good drawings that I did in my usual style for Goretober, but I still like it. You know, it's not perfect, but it's good, it's serviceable, in my opinion. And basically the concept is just that Rarity is kind of like taking Sweetie Belle, who maybe has died from natural causes, maybe was killed, who knows, maybe she saw something that she wasn't supposed to see, but Rarity just turned her into a puppet just to kind of keep her around, even if she isn't there anymore, really. And yeah, I just did this, again, as I already said, in my usual style, and I sort of segmented Sweetie Belle up because first off, I need like a source of gore. Obviously, it's Goretober. I need myself some blood. And second off, because I just thought that it would kind of like bodies kind of stiffen up after death, right? Like muscles stiffen up, and I think that Rarity would kind of counteract that by just cutting sort of these slits to make Sweetie Belle posable. It also makes her look a little bit more like an actual like wooden puppet, which I just think adds to the creepiness factor, in my opinion. It has all the wrong vibes, and it just makes it so much better, I think, in my opinion. And yeah, again, I enjoy drawing here. Just a reminder that I do this voluntarily, and like, even though it looks like a lot of work, the hair actually is one of the simpler things to draw. Like, again, there aren't any wings in this drawing, so I'm happy. On the other hand, there were 2 characters, and I kept these 2 on separate layers because if I'm not planning to make a merch shop, but if I were to make a merch shop, like, I think that Sweetie Belle puppet would be a design, and then I'd like to keep Rarity out of it, so I did them on separate layers, so that I would just take Rarity away completely in case I wanted to, you know, have just Sweetie Belle, even though Rarity is kind of overlapping her, you know? So that's just, like, the reason why I'm doing Rarity on an entirely different level, and not just layer and level, so, and not just like keeping them on the same layer. And here I did like the magic with some glow layers and stuff, and the strings are the light source for this drawing, which, again, a light source that's kind of like surrounding the characters makes a very interesting lighting situation, but it was definitely still easier than Rainbow Dash in Lacerations, or like the Lacerations drawing. It still was much easier than that. Especially because the strings are like relatively simple lines, and like they aren't all around the character, they're just the light is still coming basically from one direction. Yeah, I kind of don't know what to say about this drawing. It's really simple. There's, you know, this is just my normal shading process. I think I, again, skipped the simple lighting and shading, because that's just kind of more boring to watch, in my opinion. Because literally just me thinking about, okay, like, if there was like the classical sort of light of just above, slightly to the side, then like, how would it look? I generally do the basic lighting and shading just to give the characters a little bit more definition and to make it clear where they are in space and stuff, or like of their 3 dimensions, because there generally is like a shadow on their neck or whatever, and that like tells the viewer basically, oh yeah, the head is like protruding forward, which is something that rim lighting can't really do, at least usually. And you saw for the background, I literally just grabbed a little PNG of Rarity's Boutique from Google and used that as the background. And yeah, you've also saw me adding the blood effects, just really simple, some dripping blood. It looks really nasty and really gross, and I like it, and I'll rate this image an 8 out of 10. Day 27 was Glitch, and like, I think everyone at this point knows what the Amazing Digital Circus is. Like, if you've been into animation at all, if you've been on YouTube, you know what it is, or on TikTok for that matter, probably too. I don't have TikTok, I don't know. But yeah, I drew Zubul because they're just a really cool character in my opinion. I love their design a lot. And I drew somebody who's abstracted because it just like, when I watched the pilot of The Amazing Digital Circus, all I could think in the part where the abstracted, like the abstracted person, I don't know, was just like running around and making everyone like glitch out and stuff. All I could think about was this prompt, so you know, I had clear plans for this one. The probably biggest challenge for this one was just getting the character design to look right, you know? Especially because Zubul is a little bit complicated in terms of character design because, you know, they are really asymmetrical in all the ways possible, I guess. And their color palette is also a little bit all over the place, but in a very good way at that. It just wasn't the easiest thing to draw, I guess. But it still was fun, and I really enjoyed it. And also, I have kind of no idea how I managed to get these eyes to look that good. I might have used like the circle tool. I'm not sure anymore. Just because it's otherwise literally impossible for me or most artists, I guess, to draw a circle that looks like an actual circle, not like an egg or oval or whatever, just like a circle. So yeah, I'm suspecting that I used the circle tool there. Just, yeah, I probably did. Thinking back on it, yes, I did use the circle tool. It was a while ago, okay, don't judge. But yeah, I do enjoy the design quite a lot. I enjoyed the designs in that show, like, in general, they were really pretty to look at, and I like all of the characters just so much. I'll have to watch the pilot definitely, like, soon. Now I'm just kind of adjusting the colors and then selecting parts and moving them slightly to create the sort of glitching effect, which is something I've never done before, and it was definitely something new, but I think it turned out reasonably well, and like it looks like a glitching effect, which is exactly what I was looking for, right? So, you know, it's good. And then I used this really like textured, shapy brush for the abstraction, and I shaded it very slightly, you know, just a little bit to block in the colors. And make it look at least a little bit three-dimensional. And then I added the eyes on top. And with the eyes, I kind of just used whatever color felt right. But I'm not really sure if like it works with the eyes. Like, I don't think that their colors really like are exactly what they should be, because, you know, they are in some parts desaturated, in some parts too saturated, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel quite right and true to the design. I definitely should have used reference there, that's my bad. But yeah, and I'm just adding some really simple glow to the eyes, and then I'll add the same glitching effect, or like a similar one, just one layer, not three, to this abstraction. And I made the background, like, I was really like deciding what color looked best, and I went for this like red and decided to make it like really like almost like psychotic looking. Like this drawing is definitely like it's a lot. It's definitely a lot, with like colors and the patterns and the everything. And I also had this like I'm not sure what it's named, chromatic aberration, I think it's what it's called, which basically means that like there's blue on one side and red on the other side, kind of creates like the old 3D glasses sort of effect, and it just looks really cool, so I added that too. And here you can see the psychotic patterns in the background, and I'll rate this a 6 out of 10. It's not bad, but it's a little bit wild, even for me. Day 28 was Neon Gore, and this is the last installment of the Skull sub-series, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do for this one. I went with a moose skull because I just think that moose are really cool animals. I like their aesthetics, I guess. I don't know, just like how the animals look and stuff. Like, I just think they're neat a little bit, you know. Just like aesthetically, I guess. And I again used the same shading style as on the previous two, and just quick, like the background looks a little bit rougher on this one, which the reason for that is I'm guessing at least is that I just was working in a brighter environment, therefore didn't see my screen as well, or at least not as well as I could have, because my brightness is generally relatively low on my screen, because I don't like to waste my battery, and also I'm just kind of used to having a slightly darker screen, because it hurts my eyes if it's too bright, and I don't like that. Keep your eyes healthy. Get UV glasses. I don't have UV filter glasses, even though I stare onto my screen like most of the time. But you know, it's fine. But yeah, you can really see how I'm like adding some subtle shading just to make it look really 3D, and I'm really happy with how this looks. Actually, like, it conveys the volumes of the skull really well, in my opinion. And it's not even like the strongest shading or stuff. Like, this is the alternative to airbrushes that actually works, in my opinion. Of course, again, like, if you know what you're doing, airbrushes can be like really good, and shading with airbrushes can look amazing, but it's just much more difficult than this. And like, you see that this shading is also like relatively soft, and you know, it works because it's much easier to control than like an airbrush or whatever. And here I'm just coming in with the background. Again, like basically gradient, and yeah, you can see that it's a lot rougher than the other two were, but I think it's fine. Again, I might fix it in the future once I'm going to try to get these three pictures just look slightly more coherent and stuff, so that I can like put them next to each other and like hang them up on my wall or whatever, because they're just really aesthetic in my opinion. Like, I put them up on my wall. Will I realistically? No, I don't have any place on my walls anymore, but you know, I would. Probably. Yeah, and I'm just adding some highlights and outlines just to make the entire thing look really nice. And to the horns too, because you can't really see the horns. They're just kind of there in the edges to kind of indicate that they are there, which also kind of indicates what animal this is. And I made the blood neon blue because, you know, RGB colors. I mean, I already had red and green, those two were kind of a given, so I was like, okay, what third color would fit with this? And I was like, okay, no, it's gonna be blue, it's gotta be blue. And yeah, I set this to glow, and I really, really love how the glowing effects look. Like, they're perfect in my opinion. Like, these are my favorite gore effects from the entirety of Goretober, just because they look so glowy and like nice, and honestly, like, you know, kind of realistic even. Like, it's obviously not the most realistic blood you've ever seen, but I mean, it's blue and it's glowing, but it looks really nice, and it really looks like it's like flowing down stuff. I like the shapes of it a lot, and the color of it is also just super pleasant to look at. Like, the drawing in itself is average, you know, but the blood effects, they just make it pop so much, and how glowy they are and everything, it's just so good, and I love it a lot. And I'll have to give this one just an 8 out of 10 just for that. And here you'll be able to see all three next to each other, above each other, whatever. They look super nice together. Again, they're not perfect because I haven't really edited them together, but I love how they look. Day 29 was pins, and for this one I had literally no idea what to do. I had like a little bit of a concept in mind, maybe, of like a voodoo doll, because that was the first thing I could think of, because the other thing that I could think of was like a sort of puppet situation again, but I didn't really feel like doing that because other artists have done that already, especially with like Rarity or whatever, and so I just decided, okay, instead going to make a voodoo sort of. And then I also wanted to complete like the sub-series of the redesigned princesses, which I was missing Cadence, obviously. And so I was just like, okay, so there's going to be redesigned Cadence, just being controlled by a sort of voodoo doll, I guess. And I really love how this just looks, because the pose, it's so wrong, and the tail is in the wrong place and everything, and it just makes it look so like disturbing, I guess. Like, I really like the pose, and I really like the expression Cadence is making. And even like with the voodoo doll, also you can see that Cadence has some like scars, so you can see that she was like tormented and tortured with this voodoo doll for quite a while, actually. And yeah, you can also see kind of her like something spilling out. It's probably her lungs, like, I'm not sure. But yeah, then I just colored the entire thing, and now I'm texturing it with a sort of fur brush. And honestly, the texturing is kind of what broke the piece for me. Like, it can work if done right, but I didn't do it right here. Like, I was just experimenting, trying out, new brushes with these fur brushes, I guess, and it just, in the end, it didn't work out very well, in my opinion. But especially with like the feathers and stuff, and it just feels slightly over textured and not very like pleasant to look at, I guess. It definitely could be much better. And then I struggled with like what to do with the hair, because the hairbrush, like the strand brush, I guess, was kind of weird. Eventually I figured something out, like how to work with it, but it took 2 attempts and it still doesn't look like perfect or great or anything really. Like, working with these realistically textured things is difficult, especially if you're working with a line arted style and stuff like that. And then I kind of textured the voodoo doll, or tried to texture it. It looks kind of flat and weird, and again, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's fine. And I made the buttons just kind of in a semi-satiated kind of soft style, just because they're supposed to be shiny. And I tried to find a brush that worked for the sort of wool coming out of it, the bottom of it, and I think that worked relatively fine. The eyes and teeth and gore and stuff, again, just making it shiny, which I'm not sure if that works with the fur either, really. The blood effects on this one are fine, in my opinion. Like, they're not perfect or anything, but they work well enough. And they're definitely still better than the insects drawing, just saying. Like, everything will beat that. Yeah, now I'm just adding the green magic, because I'd imagine that Chrysalis is actually the one who's controlling Cadence here, because that just makes for an interesting story. And I'm rating this one a 5 out of 10. It's not great, but it's fine. The colors look fine in the end. Day 30 was Undead, and we're almost done with Goretober, which is unbelievable. But for this one, I did a Springtrap from the games. I saw the movie like 5 days later, I think. Pretty much exactly 5 days later, yeah. And the movie, it wasn't bad. It wasn't the best movie ever, but I did really like the animatronics. Like, I thought that they looked really good. And like, it wasn't really all that scary to me. I'm just really desensitized to horror, specifically when it comes to FNAF, I guess. It was my first ever horror movie, which, I know that sounds unbelievable with like how much horror art I make and stuff, but yeah, it was my first horror movie. And, I guess it wasn't a terrible beginning. But yeah, for this drawing, I tried sort of this really strong shading style, kind kind of like comic booky almost, where it's just like literally like black shadows and then basically no other lighting, maybe like some colorful highlights or whatever. But yeah, I really like how that looks in the end, but it definitely again took some slight back and forth to just balance it out, with the light spots and dark spots, to make the details actually like somewhat visible, while at the same time also like just suggest them instead of literally like showing them, because that's kind of the entire point of this sort of style or technique or whatever. And sometimes I had to add a little bit more light just to kind of show off all the stuff, while other times I had to kind of add more darkness to like only indicate details and not explicitly show them, And then I also did the same for the ground beneath Springtrap. And then I started coloring him, just flat colors. I think most of them were picked from the drawing. Maybe they were also like hand adjusted, I guess. And for the ground I went with this kind of nasty brown. And I added flames in the background because that's, I think, like, a classic scene from Security Breach. And also, I'm not sure on this, but I think from other games as well. I haven't actually played any of the games. But yeah, then I added just some yellow highlights, and that was it. I'll rate this one a 7 out of 10. Now, for the grand finale, we're finally at day 31, which was Decapitation, and I just get for this one in just outside of my usual program, which is why it's in purple and stuff. But then I just inserted it because I just like the pose of the body so much. And for this one, I drew my OC, or myself. You can actually, if you look really closely, you can see the little stitches on my neck. There aren't explicitly like stitches, but there is a slight line of where, my head was kind of like where I was decapitated. And for this one, I even wrote a really short story. And since I'm showing the entire speed paint here and not just spread it up slightly more, and not actually like really commenting on drawing, because y'all know what's going on at this point, I think, I'll just read it to you. Nobody was sitting at a desk, focusing on their work. Their elf was trembling softly as his digital pen touched the smooth surface of their tablet. Their wings fluttered slightly, and they closed their eyes for just a second. Staring at the screen for hours at a time wasn't the healthiest thing to do, especially for some pony as sensitive to light as nobody. Stretching their neck, they stood up. They stared out the open window out into the rainy weather. The drops were hitting hard against the glass, and the wind could be heard imitating a whistle. Inside, it was pleasantly warm though, and nobody liked to imagine the flickering of a fire perfecting the cozy fall ambience. After a short while, they returned to their desk, turning on something to listen to, and opening the drawing app once again. This would be the final drawing of Goretober, the drawing for Halloween itself. They gripped the stylus with a tired hoof, ready to put the last highlights on the screen. The pen ran in secure strokes across the display, leaving traces of digital paint behind. Setting the layer to glow, nobody admired his work. This wasn't the best they'd made by far, but it had the sense of completion most others lacked. With the signature on the piece, they leaned back, finally finished. Their ears perked up at a faint sound. The wind must have opened the window, as a fresh breeze hit their body. They stood up, ready to close it. As they looked outside, the autumn rain hitting their face in droplets large enough to drown a fly, they saw something flash through their vision. It came closer, at what they felt like light speed, hitting their neck and slicing clean through. They barely even felt any pain, only the soft thump of their head as it landed in front of their body. Through blurry vision, they could see a large butcher's knife stuck in the wall. It was stained red from all the blood, but the yellow note at its end had stayed relatively clean, save for a sizable splatter covering part of the text written on it. Nobody's consciousness was slipping quickly, and their brain function slowly starting to die out, but he still somehow managed to read the words on the card. Congratulations, you completed Goretober. So yeah, that was the story, as you could hear, and it was a really short and sweet one in my opinion, and I actually wrote this before I drew the drawing itself. I wrote this, I think, the day before on the 30th because I still had some time in the evening and just really felt like getting this over with because I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough time, and I have to admit, starting the drawing on the 30th definitely helped a lot. I'm super happy with how it turned out. The shading is just, it's nice. It's a fully rendered drawing. Basically, you know, like I do for the Death series or just like for my bigger illustrations, which is not something that I usually did, especially here for Goretober, since I have to get these drawings done quickly, and it really felt good getting back to my roots and just, you know, drawing something in a style I was really comfortable in and knew what I was doing. Also, yes, now that I will point this out, it will ruin the drawing for you, I promise, so like skip 10 seconds if you don't want to hear it, but I actually misplaced the, you know, feeding tube on the head, so it's on the wrong side. I mean, anatomically it wasn't going to be correct. I wasn't going to draw an anatomically correct neck. I wasn't planning to, but, you know, it's mirrored. I hope that ruined that for you. Sorry. But yeah, for the background, I added this really nice wall texture that I just got off Google again. And, you know, I just think that brought the entire piece together, made it give it that realistic touch that I really needed. And now let's go through the entirety of Goretober. Day 1, Teeth. Day 2, Candy Gore. Day 3, Nosebleed. Day 4, Mutation. Day 5, Autopsy. Day 6, Eyes. Day 7, Gut Spill. Day 8, Crystals. Day 9, Poisoned. Day 10, Hanahaki Disease. Day 11, Insects. Day 12, Bruised. Day 13, Stitches. Day 14, Parasite. Day 15, Fungi. Day 16, Hooks. Day 17, Plant Growth. Day 18, Cannibalism. Day 19, Bites. Day 20, Vomit. Day 21, Lacerations. Day 22, Silver Platter. Day 23, Impaled. Day 24, Amputation. Day 25, Bones. Day 26, Puppet. Day 27, Glitch. Day 28, Neon Gore. Day 29, Pins. Day 30, Undead. Day 31, Decapitation. And that was it for Goretober. Thank you guys so much for going along with me, coming along for this journey. It was such a fun time for me, and I really enjoyed making this entire video, making this entire series, and I am so happy to be able to have done it, and I am so proud to have finished it, because I otherwise have never actually seen anyone finish it, which is really surprising to me. But yeah, bye for now.